Good morning. Welcome to Teams at 10. And we're bringing you into episode 5 in the People Mastery series of webinars for more tips on how to bring your team from suddenly virtual to surviving and thriving. And if you think you just logged into the wrong pajama party, you are dead right. We are in our jammies this morning. So I've got my dressing gown nice and cozy in Kuma, and I've got the lovely Kirsty and Jennifer with me this morning. So a little bit of context, why are we in our jammies? Lovely Jennifer is convalescing with us today. She's recovering from some shoulder work that she had done yesterday. So we weren't quite sure whether she was going to make it video-wise today. So we thought we'd make her feel a little bit better by turning up in our jammies so she's feeling comfortable with us all today. And hey, if you can't have an FFT doing jammies in your webinar now, when can you have it? So we thought we'd, and hopefully some of you might be sitting there in your Uggies and your jammies on the bottom, even if you're looking very professional on the top. So we are, just like you, jammies on the webinar today. So Jennifer and I are going to be sharing some information with you today on exploring receiving and giving feedback for improvement. And Kirsty down the bottom will be helping us manage questions at the end of the session. So first 10 minutes will be Jennifer and I, and then we'll go into questions at the end. So again, just like the last webinars, if you've got questions for us, please do pop them in the chat box and we'll come to them at the end. Okay. So why would we even talk about feedback for improvement anyway? And I guess a little bit of context before we jump across to Jennifer is that it's really it's your number one job as a leader is to help people learn and grow. And if you're not providing feedback for improvement to your people, then you are doing them a disservice. So let's start with the receiving end. We're going to come to Jennifer and she's going to talk to you about receiving feedback as a leader. Over to you, Jen.
Thanks, Anna. But before I do, folks, can I just take a moment to speak Anna's virtues as a leader? Because really, I thought I just needed to be on audio this morning. And she encouraged me to embrace the vulnerability and talk about support and team spirit, saying, look, we'll join you in our jammies. But I trust Anna completely. So here we are. Thank you, Anna.
You're welcome.
I feel very supported. Okay, so on receiving feedback as leaders, again, it's a huge topic and lots of potential content. So I'm going to just focus on 2 touch points this morning. The first is leading by example and role modeling when seeking and receiving feedback. And the second is being an approachable leader, which is closely connected, including how our nonverbal language signals whether we are open to feedback. So let's face it, receiving feedback can feel scary and vulnerable, but without it, I think you'd probably agree we don't learn and develop. The key, I think, in giving and receiving feedback is paying attention to not only what we say or do, but also in how we're showing up, especially as leaders. So being a humble leader who doesn't mask imperfections and in fact, who embodies a growth mindset and is curious and actively seeking feedback, facilitates diverse, dynamic, and results-oriented teams. And being the leader who actively seeks feedback requires us to be vulnerable, humble, and resilient. Those are some of the things we've touched on in previous episodes. So it's not an easy road, yet it is ultimately rewarding. And so just think short-term pain for long-term gain. And something to watch out for is that we as humans often collapse receiving feedback about our behavior with getting feedback about the self that we are. So you might find yourself falling into internal sort of moral conversations where you feel bad about yourself. So if you can catch that, to mitigate that, remember that feedback is another person's interpretation. It's not black or white, true or false. And if you've asked for it as a leader, and you should, make sure you understand the evidence behind the feedback. So, for example, if a team member gave me the feedback that I was lacking on follow through, I might want to ask them a couple of questions to expand the conversation. And some examples could be, tell me more. It's always a really good one. Do you have an example? How does this impact on you and the team? What would be different if I was better at this? To really seek to understand, listen to understand. And role modeling, seeking and receiving feedback is a powerful way to demonstrate to team members what's possible and to invite them to open up and to be more engaged. So a leader that walks into a meeting or a one-on-one and says, "Tell me what's wrong with the way I'm thinking about this," is role modeling feedback and signaling confidence in themselves and in the team. Very powerful. So another question leaders can be asking kind of generally is, how could I be, or what would I do differently as your leader to support you in fulfilling your role or feeling more satisfied at work, et cetera, et cetera. And these two general examples are takeaways that you can fine tune and think about your specific context this week ahead and what feedback you could be actively seeking for your particular situation. And if you've never done this before, don't expect instant candor and willingness on the part of your team members. They'll need to see you walk your talk consistently. You'll need to build trust in the relationship before you see the big rewards come. And my second point is about being an approachable leader. Leading by example goes a long way toward that, but there's one more thing I'd like to add. Paying attention to our nonverbal language, our tone, our mood, and our comportment. And by comportment, what I mean is the way we sit and stand and move, our facial expressions, all play a major role in signaling our approachability. So a little story. I worked with a leader that was having challenges building trust and getting his team to open up. And I asked him about his morning routine when he entered the office. And by playing that back in his mind and observing himself over the next week, he realized that when he came into work, he generally kept his eyes on the ground, walked straight to his office, shut the door, and got down to work. He thought he was role modeling a great work ethic. And maybe he was. And he wasn't leading his team. So he experimented with paying attention to his body and how he was comporting himself. He started lifting his head when he walked into work, looking around, making eye contact, saying good morning. And he started inviting people to coffee catch-ups and asking for feedback. And eventually the team became more cohesive and creative, and job satisfaction and engagement scores went up. So this coming week, I invite you to pay attention to what you're signaling non-verbally about your approachability and your openness to feedback. And you might also ask a trusted colleague that you think will be candid with you for their feedback on this. All right, that's all I have. Over to you, Anna.
Nice one. Thank you. Some good questions to be asking for the rest of the week. So I'm going to take you through a couple of things that you can do with your team. You know, now you've absorbed that feedback as a leader. And 3 things I want to cover off. I just want to recap on intention. And if you are thinking every time you're going to give someone feedback for improvement, your intention is to help them learn and grow. It will give you permission to have that conversation rather than avoid it. Because if you can see something that is a problem and you're not discussing that, you are doing your team members a disservice. You are preventing them from learning and growing. So again, it's, you know, you can even say that to the people. I'd like to have a little conversation, something that I've noticed that I think can help you learn and grow. Okay. So number 1, intention. Number 2, I'm going to talk to you about a little simple model that you can use. And if you watched us last week, you would have heard us using the STAR model for giving appreciation and recognition, affirmation. And we're going to use that same model with a little twist for giving feedback for improvement. So STAR, so situation and task, action, result. And I'm just going to give you a little example. And this is a really common one that people talk to us about, which is people turning up late to meetings. So I'll just run it through and then we'll debrief it. So remember yesterday we had our team meeting and you arrived 10 minutes late. What that meant is that we had to revisit issues that we'd already discussed to bring you up to speed, and that wasted the time of some of the other group members. And I noticed that they were quite frustrated, your colleagues in that. What I'd like you to do next time is to turn up really promptly so that we can use our time effectively and you avoid damaging the relationships with your peers, okay? So that start with an additional action and additional result. So the situation task was the meeting, the action was arriving late, the result was the impact that had on revisiting the issues and wasting team members' time. The additional action, the alternate action, was turning up promptly. and the alternate result would be using the meeting effectively and making sure that you maintain the relationships with your colleagues. So star R, okay, that's what you can use to give feedback for improvement. And again, if you're really confident, you can use a coaching approach to go through that. So, you know, what do you think was the impact of you arriving late in the meeting, and what was the result for the team, and what do you think you could do differently next time, and what different result would that bring? So you can go for bonus points if you use the coaching approach. A little bit on the wire for time, but I did want to add one other thing in. I can steal some time from the questions. And that was about when you've given someone feedback for improvement more than one time and you notice that nothing is changing. And I call those Groundhog Day conversations. So you might remember that. Maybe you've talked to that person about being late 3 times and nothing is changing. So whenever you feel you're in that Groundhog Day conversation, the trigger for you is to think, I'm in the wrong conversation. So your conversation would be about not adapting to feedback. Okay, so that would be a different way of having that conversation to hopefully get a different result. Okay, so we're just up to 11 minutes. I'm going to swing over to Kirsty. What questions do we have today, Kirsty?
Thanks, Anna. We do have one question at the moment. We have, I'm concerned that as a leader, asking for feedback might make me seem weak or indecisive. What are your thoughts on that?
Ooh, interesting one. I think Jen and I both have something on that one. I think the thing is, if you are a leader who doesn't look for feedback, or you do look for feedback, you know, if you're not accepting that, and if you don't think there is room for you to grow, then you're not role modeling. You know, you can't expect others to accept feedback and look for it if you're not doing it. So I think it's the opposite. I think if you're asking for feedback, you are showing your humility and your vulnerability, and that you believe that you have an opportunity for growth too, just like everybody else. Jen, anything else you'd like to add?
Absolutely agree with that, Anna. I mean, not asking for feedback is kind of a way of being defensive, really. And I think leaders I see do that effectively. They're signaling actually a lot of strong self-confidence and confidence in the team. And that just helps lift everybody up. And like Anna said, that role modeling, it's got a ripple effect. It becomes the culture. And then so much can happen through that in terms of growth and development.
Thank you.
We have one more quick question if you have time.
Yes.
I've been taught in the past to do a praise sandwich. What are your thoughts on that approach?
Go, Anna.
I'm just going to confess right now, I'm just going to slam that one right out of the park. So praise sandwich, for anybody that hasn't been taught that, hopefully that's many of you, is something good, something bad, something good, otherwise known commonly as a shit sandwich. Please don't use it. It mixes your messages. Often the person walks away from the communication going, oh, so I'm going quite well at such and such. And the message for improvement is totally lost. Or the other side is that the positive messages, which may be true, are tarnished by the feedback for improvement. So separate your conversations. You know, if you've got something positive to say, make that a separate conversation. If you've got feedback for improvement, make that a separate conversation. And I guess one thing that I just like to add on, you know, to giving feedback for improvement is your support to support the person to solve the problem. So you and they are working on the issue together. So if it's turning up late for meetings, what can we do together so that you can be on time? How can I support you to be more effective and more prompt in the future? So it's not, here's your problem, over to you, you go fix it. It's, as your leader, how can you and I work on it together to improve? Okay. Jen, anything you wanted to add on that one?
Just the power of curiosity and open-ended questions in those kinds of conversations. You know, giving the feedback and then drilling into how does the other person see it? What's their perception? What might be a barrier that's getting in their way? So it's kind of going into that coaching conversation, like Anna was mentioning. That's all. I think that's all I have to say about that. Yeah. And also just something about stepping up on both sides of this giving and receiving equation to taking responsibility, being self-responsible. And if I go back to the nonverbal language, there's a lot we can learn from going back to centering practices and paying attention to the sensation in our bodies that gets evoked in these conversations, and finding our way back to center so that we can really show up and listen to learn.
Yeah, beautiful. So guys, we're right up to 10:15. So a little summary, which I'll credit to Sharon. She's got it in the chat box there. Pirate feedback is good. Star R, it's a pirate language. Sandwiches are bad, okay? So no sandwiches, plenty of pirate feedback. And again, you can watch the video, use that example to craft your own feedback for improvement and help your people to learn and grow. So bye-bye from our jammies. Look forward to seeing you on our normal clubber next week. And thanks for joining us. Have a great week.
Bye everyone.
Bye, everyone.